Hello, welcome to the Daily Fantasy Flex Podcast, the PGA edition. I am your host, Bryan Mears. I'm joined as always by Colin Davey and Peter Jennings, aka CSU Ram 88. In this podcast, we are going to hit on the Genesis Open, previously called the Los Angeles Open. Before that, we're going to talk a little bit about last week's tournament, what our thoughts were on ownership, players, all that fun stuff. Colin, how you doing? You had Ted Potter as your pick to win, right?
Yeah, everybody had. I think everyone saw that coming. That win exactly his expectation. I think we all saw the flirting with the 59 coming. That was a very standard prediction. Nothing really interesting to talk about there. I actually love it when we're good for like 2 or 3 of these a year where just some complete random person banks a tournament on a completely unsustainable round. I do wonder what it's like when you're maybe a mainstay grinder, in the top 200, and you're just wondering, why can't I play like that always? And just what comes over you. I mean, I know it's golf. I'm sure we've all had rounds where it's why can't I play like that always? But it just has to be so different at the highest level playing that good at golf. Pete, what was your best round ever where it's why can't I play like that always?
I shot 73 this summer at my home course from the tips, and it was just I knew it was unsustainable. I made probably 10 putts over 10 feet. I chipped in for eagle on the drivable par 4. Just ludicrous lucky. Now I'm back and shooting in the high 80s and the 90s. So, that was my peak round. Lowered my index a lot, which cost me a lot of money down the road. So didn't win that much money on the round. It was amazing and glorious, but ended up costing me a lot of money down the road.
Yep.
Pete, how was
I have a separate question for you guys, actually, kind of an age-old. We always have this. How much DJ did you guys have this week?
Played him in cash and faded him in tournaments.
Yeah, I think that was the correct play, 100%. It's it was kind of I don't know if it was results-oriented or a lot of the winning lineups had DJ, but DJ was a pretty clear fade to me. His ownership was right where I thought it would be, around 35%. Mm-hmm. And I know he looks like the destroyer of worlds, and he played really well last weekend, but I don't think it's so tough to pick a guy at 35%. I think he has to be head and shoulders above the field and orders of magnitude. And I just don't think he was there. I pivoted to Rahm for a lot of it, which is kind of frustrating because he kind of had a little bit of meltdown and underperformed. But I think Rahm at 10% versus DJ at 35%, you take Rahm 11 times out of 10 just because you have so much leverage there that I think that's the correct tournament play. Didn't work out this week, but I think that's the correct play. What do you guys think?
I agree. Yeah. Cantlay and Rahm were my 2 leverage guys at the top. So I think we're on sort of the same page as far as but I had DJ in cash as well.
Yeah, DJ was 60% owned in the Thunderdome.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was clearly the number one choice in terms of equity, which is why it made sense for cash. But you're getting some good pivots. You had Spieth up there as well, and then Jason Day. I think that's probably my biggest story coming out of last week. Obviously we saw him play well, get a win, but to back it up and play well again. A couple of years ago, he was the best putter on tour. And obviously there's noise and variance in putting, but just like someone like Jordan Spieth, Jason Day, even last year, he was still a great putter. He really, if he's striking the ball even remotely decently, it's very clear he can be one of the top players on tour. And if this is kind of the Jason Day we can expect for this year, the parity not even the parity, but the amount of firepower at the top with Spieth, DJ, Rahm, Jason Day, Justin Thomas.
We just need Rory now.
Rory is the exact opposite. Can't putt to save his life, but it's a loaded top tier, and Tiger hopefully will be even a little bit relevant, and golf is in a great place.
Yeah, golf is in a great place. I agree with that. We have so many good golfers right now. It's ridiculous.
Yep. Well, thanks for that. Now that's good discussion on ownership. Now to take a big drink of water and see what tournament we're playing this week and who won it last year by how many strokes.
Yep. The Genesis Open. DJ, the winner last year, 5 strokes. He shot 17 under. I mean, yeah, the dude's ridiculous. And I agree that, you know, when a guy's 35, 40% owned, it's tough to play him in tournaments. But, I mean, DJ is just – he's one of the scariest fades in DFS, that's for sure. All right, well, let's get into this tournament. It's played at Riviera Country Club in a suburb of LA, organized by the Tiger Woods Foundation, which is exciting because we do have Tiger back in this tournament. So, Colin, before we get to the field, let's sort of talk about what the course is. Before the pod, we were talking, you know, it seems like it might be a distance course because we have DJ running away with it. In 2016, Bubba Watson won it. He's a distance guy, but you have some interesting data, I think, on the course.
Yeah, it's kind of a mixed result. It almost played like different courses over the years. So in 14 and 15, I agree. It's distance 100%. Can't get away with it or can't get away without it. But then 16, 17, I mean, distance got a knock, accuracy got a knock. The only thing that got like a tangible boost is putting, actually, which – it's just so rare to see like putting be a positive stat that pops just because it's such a noisy stat. And it's also weird considering look at how well DJ did at the top. But I think if there's like I think it's a mistake that people make in the abstract. Just look at who is in the top 5 and then see like what type of golfers they are and assume that's the course fit. But you really have to look at the whole field, and whole field stats say distance actually gets a little bit of a penalty in the last 2 years. So it's kind of conflicting information. Distance comes out as net negative, all else being equal since they're in the more recent years. Like I could actually fade distance. It's not as strong a course fit as other places. But yeah, I am seeing something completely different than apparently everyone else is. Am I just having a stroke? Is the data getting weird on me? Like, Pete, what do you think on, like, why are people saying it's distance?
I just came in with the impression that it was distance. I mean, it's a par 71, so it's not like it's a total beast of a course, but there's some drivable par 4s, have to do well in the par 5s here, which obviously is critical every week, you know, especially on DraftKings and for DFS with birdies being so important. But a lot of people think it's distance. That's kind of what I've read around the industry too, but it's interesting to hear your take. And how much are you weighting course history here, Colin? Same as always, or?
Yeah, standard amount. I don't like going past the 5-year window if I don't have to. I don't think there's really a reason you ever have to. But yeah, we're pretty robust, and I'm happy to give my standard 5-year window and give it standard amount.
Okay.
All right, well, let's dive into this field. At the top is obviously DJ. He is very, very expensive, as you might expect. He's at 11.9. And then below him, we have Jordan Spieth at 11.3. We have Rory at 11.1, JT at 10.7, and Paul Casey at 10.2. So we have 5 guys above 10K. Very, very loaded field. Should be a good one. Let's start talking about these top 5 guys above 10K. Pete, I'll kick to you first on this one. Who's standing out to you, either based on recent play, course fit, guys you're interested in this week?
I mean, DJ is the clear top equity play. I mean, it just looks like he's kind of in that same form he was in the beginning of last year where he was just running away with everything. So for equity, give me DJ as the best overall play. I'm intrigued by Justin Thomas at his price tag for ownership and for tournaments. You know, one of those guys last year that just was low owned consistently relative to the other guys in the mid to top tier. And now that he's clearly in the top tier, I think people are going to click Spieth and Dustin Johnson more than him. So I'm intrigued by him. Rory is a fade for me until I see him have any sort of semblance on the greens.
Especially if putting's important this week, right?
Yeah, putting's important this week. I mean, he looks like worse than me out there. Like, I don't know who's like a better putter or like who's worse, Rory or me. I mean, that's saying a lot. 8 index guy versus a professional golfer. Yeah. Obviously, it's really mental for him. And I do, obviously, when someone gets hot with the putter, like that's clearly not sustainable. But when someone's just putting egregiously and there's a history of that, it definitely can become mental. So I think Rory is clearly in that camp. So he's probably a fade. His ownership was low relatively last week, in the past, even when he wasn't in great form, everyone just loved to still take Rory because of his upside. But we'll see what happens this week. Curious Colin's opinion. And then Casey, I mean, Casey's a really nice play this week. I mean, he obviously has good course history here. Not great course history, but good course history. I think he's fine at his price tag, kind of rounding out the top end here.
Yeah, I basically agree with the rundown. I think DJ is the top equity play for sure. It's kind of a redux of last week. Does he have enough overwhelming equity where you're not sensitive to his ownership and he's a must play? I think this week the answer is no. I think I know it's scary to fade him in tournaments because he just looks like a world beater, and he could very well round into that this year. But I think the opportunity cost of other people from equity and ownership is just too strong. I like your JT call where he's had two top 25s to start off the year. I think he's just as competitive, and it's way easier to build like a lineup if you want to go stars and scrubs with something like JT and Paul Casey. Those are lineups that you can make that you can't do like if you have DJ in there. I guess for reference, like if you want an example of a time where you do have to pick DJ and like who cares if he's going to be 35% owned, it happened once last year, and it was the Byron Nelson last year. If you actually go back to player models and kind of look at what the data was at that time, DJ was something like 20% to win, and he's only 15% this year. It looks similar, but I think there's a huge gap between the two, and like until like he's in the 20% to win range, that's when he's truly like rampaging through the field, playing Tiger Light, and you have to pick him. The other reason why I'm inclined to fade him this week is kind of the main GPP this week is they switched from the dog leg to the club twirl, which is a little bit more expensive, and first place pays 20% of the prize pool instead of something like the usual 10 or 15. So when you have a top heavier GPP, you just need to go more contrarian, and you have to play to win more because all of the positive expectation of your plays are in winning it outright. Yeah, it sucks that it's a harder thing to do and you have to go higher variance and kind of aim for or shoot for the moon. But I think one thing we don't talk about is how payout structure of the GPPs you're in influences how contrarian or like how much of equity versus ownership you get. And like, I mean, I don't know, even if it was like a normal dog leg, I'd probably fade DJ. But I think you basically have to treat this like almost like the millionaire maker, where it's a win or bust. And like, yeah, that probably sucks for your bottom line because most of us like will not win this tournament or will not win the club twirl just because it's an improbable event. But you need to adjust your strategy depending on how the payout structure works.
Well, I plan on winning it, Colin. I don't know about you, so we'll see how it goes. Pete,
all right, you got this on lockdown. I apologize.
Yeah. Pete, what are your thoughts on what Colin said? And, something we haven't talked about in a little bit, but, if you look at like our PGA contest stash board, which I try to dive into every week and just see trends of the public, it seems like one of the biggest edges you can have is just not using the full 50K. It seems every single week, right about half the field especially in these lower buy-in tournaments, but even like the $33 dog leg, half the field's using the full 50K cap. So even going down to 49, 900, like just leaving $100 off, your salary cap makes a big difference as far as creating a unique lineup and not overlapping if you're going to hit first place. So what are your thoughts about being contrarian, top-heavy prize pools and stuff like that?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I mean, we've talked about it over the years, and even more emphasis should be put on it when they're top-heavy payout structures. So the Millionaire Maker this week with the Club Twirl, completely with you. Duplicate lineup just crushes your equity. Your lineup cannot be profitable if it's a duplicate, especially in a top-heavy field, especially with where the VIG is on these GPPs. So totally with you. You need unique lineups. You need leverage, and that's something that you can do pretty easily on Fantasy Labs. You can set your parameters to make lineups with only X amount of the salary, so you're not having maximum salary. And I completely agree. My 150 lineups this week, maybe a couple will be maxed out. That'll be more cash game or higher stake stuff that might still be in my mix of 150, but the majority of my lineups, hopefully 95% or more, won't spend the full salary.
Yeah. Like in the multi lineup builder in our models, you can there's a max salary cap box, and you can put in just like 99.9% as opposed
That's exactly
to
what I do.
Yeah. And so it just doesn't use the full 50, and it's like a no brainer for me to do that every week. So any last thoughts on this top tier? Pete, who do you think is going to be the lowest owned?
That's why I said JT, but it might be Rory actually after last week. He's still so good just striking the ball. Like his swing is so beautiful, and everyone, his last shot of the tournament, he almost made eagle after going into the hazard, which would have been just absolutely ridiculous. But I still think he'll probably be the lowest owned. People saw the 5 putt, and if you watched him, there's just some egregious misses. So it's hard to say Rory because he normally isn't low owned, but last week we're starting to see a trend. So I think he'll probably be Rory or JT. I think Paul Casey with the course history and kind of the lower tier price tag will be in the mix as well. But I'd be shocked if it was Spieth or DJ.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, JT seems to be maybe the best combination of sort of equity as far as his play goes and ownership. So going to be curious to see where his ownership is.
It's definitely not. DJ is a lock to be the most owned, and then everyone else I could see, but I'd guess Spieth, and Spieth will probably be the second most owned. He kind of found it towards the end a little bit last week. So
yeah, that's a good point. All right, let's talk about the guys. Let's talk about the guys right below them in salary. Talk about the guys that are sort of in the 8 to 9K range. We have Phil at 9.9, and then a bunch of interesting guys. I think around here, of course, everyone has to get their take in on Tiger. He's at 8.8 on DraftKings. So, Colin, I'll kick to you on this one. What are your thoughts on the 8 to 9K guys?
God, interestingly enough, the guy that I'm still high on is Tony Finau, and he has awful history to boot. So this is kind of this classic, like, if someone has awful history, but you truly believe that they're like just way better than they were before, like, what do you do with those conflicting pieces of information? I think he's good enough to overcome his course history, and like he's making like market improvements. His level is just like at such a higher level that like I would be okay with it, with okay playing him. If the course history is too much a concern, I understand. I probably go Leishman or Reeve, who I think they're kind of like mainstays at this point. Like I think Leishman's a little too cheap at 8,500. I mean, we've seen him in the 10K range. He's done nothing but play up to that price tag, and like I always justifiable. As far as ownership, like I could always talk myself into Daniel Berger 12%. That seems to be a mainstay play of mine this year. Last time it happened at Phoenix, it was definitely. He was winning for a big chunk of that tournament. And kind of faded down the stretch. Maybe that's just unfortunate, like that's golf, but definitely has the hops to be up there. If he continues to be under-owned and people just don't feel comfortable paying up for him, I can slot him in all week because he's just too good not to eventually think one eventually. So those are the guys that are most interesting in this range to me. I know Fleetwood's going to get a lot of talk. The tricky part with Fleetwood is all his results have been Europe in the last couple of weeks. So it's kind of like, how do you translate that into how it plays across the tour? Maybe for Fleetwood, he needs a little bit more emphasis on field strength because it is lower than everyone else. And he's been good on Europe, but I just don't think that it's like good enough that he deserves a 9,500. So, and like, plus I think he's just going to be so hyped because, everyone loved him last year. Mm-hmm. That hype is going to continue as he crosses the pond. I think his ownership is just going to be pushed a little bit too high for him to be viable in a lot of these GPPs.
Are you worried about his putting? That's sort of like the weaker part of his game.
Yeah, I think normally, like, you look at, like, like, bad putting, everyone's due for aggression, like, pick him. But, like, especially this week when, like, on the one course where putting actually seems to matter. I read some stats somewhere. I think Riviera has the highest percentage of missed putts inside 6 feet. So it's just like a tilt fest. So like that's like Yeah, this is probably not the week to pick Fleetwood, and probably strategic to zag where everyone else is zigging.
Interesting. Pete, what are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, Fleetwood number one on my model right now, and that is, I think he's number two behind DJ. Obviously that's a lot of this, recent form in Europe. I mean, he's hit 83.4% of his greens in his recent form with, our metrics here at Fantasy Labs, and just crushed on the Euro Tour. So I think Colin's right to point out some reasons to be a little nervous there. I think Brendan Grace is somewhat interesting. We'll see how owned he ends up being. He obviously only has one event here within our window for course history, but it was pretty nice. I think he's intriguing. You start looking at some of these other guys. You have other Euro players. Noren played well a couple weeks ago. I love Noren in general. I think he's a really interesting Masters pick. The thing that is weird, I don't know if you guys watched. I mean, I know Colin didn't watch, but they showed pictures of his hands. And it was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. His hands were just so beat up, and he has a bunch of wrist tendinitis issues as well. And that's kind of the way he swings the golf club. He just comes so down on the ball with so much torque, and he hits these really powerful fades. So that stayed with me, and I don't know. Hopefully that doesn't influence me too much, but it does make me nervous with him. You got Kuchar, who is captain consistency. Did have a really ugly round on Saturday. Started off with a triple bogey, but ended up making the cut on the number. I think he's fine. Kind of, what to expect with Kuchar. I agree with Colin's analysis for the most part. Pat Perez, I mean, meh. This whole range is kind of meh to me. The one that obviously everyone wants to talk about is Tiger, and I'm just hoping Tiger plays well for golf's sake. But,
you're still going to have no Tiger at least right now.
Range, I'm not in love with it overall. But what's up?
You still going to have no Tiger for now?
Probably no Tiger. I like a ton of guys in this high 7K range. So I imagine more lineups are going to be like that. And maybe that's a reason to play a lot of players in this range, because I think in general people are going to pick a star or two and then go down versus loading up kind of in this mid tier where I don't think there's any super strong plays relative to the high sevens.
Yeah, Colin, do you have any sort of insight into whether stars and scrubs is more popular than it should be in golf right now? Just public trends of people want to take the stars and scrubs, so loading up on 9K guys. Even when you don't even think about the players, it's just a better strategy because of ownership.
I think ownership is just people are always going to want to pick a star just because that's the way it always has been. I think odds per dollar is essentially the single most important metric in terms of driving ownership. So I think it's what people default to and look at, and people just can't put together lineups without someone who has at least 3% to win a tournament. So, and I think there's some merit to that. You need some measure of upside and someone who can because you have to if you want to win a GPP, pretty much have to have the winner, unless the winner is Ted Potter, apparently. Right. But yeah, I think that's the way it's always been. I think it depends on how stars and scrubsy you want to get. Yeah, it varies from week to week in terms of just how monstrous people look. Take DJ for example. He just looks like a world destroyer. So
yeah.
I'm sure people will it'll be really tough to get away from him for a lot of people, especially with this history here.
Yeah. So, if odds per dollar is sort of the biggest indicator, then would you expect before we move on from this tier here that Reavie and Leishman are going to be the chalky guys?
Yeah, that sounds about right. Look at everyone else in this range. Reavie, that's a pretty no-brainer. Yeah, yes, I agree.
Cool. All right, well, let's move down to this low range, talk about the guys in the 7K, and if anyone's sitting out in the 6 range, we can hit on them. Pete, I'll kick to you. Who's sitting out in your model right now?
The first guy that I think deserves a lot of conversation is going to be Bubba Watson, who obviously is one here. I'm a big believer that switching to this new golf ball is a real thing, and so far we've seen some good results the last couple of weeks. So I think Bubba will be an interesting player. There's obviously a lot of upside with someone like Bubba. There's also some risk. We'll see how he kind of plays overall. In terms of a pivot, if I know Bubba's going to be heavily owned, I'd gladly pivot to Brendan Steele, who I think is a total stud. Obviously, we love him here on this podcast. I have no problem going Brendan Steele. Not the best course history, but I'm fine with it. One guy that I think is interesting as well in that same tier, basically the same price as Bubba, is Kevin Streelman, who's coming in playing amazing golf, really looking good, but does not have very good course history. So he's an intriguing one. You got JB Holmes a little bit cheaper than that, who you're going to play the driving distance angle. He's a guy you can take. He's a very good DraftKings player, makes a ton of birdies, but obviously there's volatility. So we'll see what happens there. You got a bunch of guys that are intriguing, kind of just bombers that have upsides. I like Ollie Schneiderjans. Kokrak and List are going to get some attention. I mean, Molinari, I don't know what he has to do to ever be priced up.
7-2. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Also, how is Cantlay 7-6?
Yeah, that's the main. Yes, Cantlay is. Sorry, I was scrolling down. Cantlay is my favorite play by far of the whole range.
I don't understand why him and Molinari are 7-6 and 7-2. That's just
those guys.
I had a rant ready on Cantlay, so I'll just quietly bide my time. But I'm agreeing with all of it. Continue.
Yeah, he's like a couple thousand mispriced.
I forgot. Cantlay is higher up in my model, so I was just scrolling down, and Cantlay is my favorite play by far.
He's like a cash lock in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I love Molinari too, 7,200. I mean, if you're just going to look at some of the like long-term adjusted round and like quality of golfer for his price, he makes a lot of sense. So, and one other thing I meant to mention, I think that Colin hit on is Finau is clearly my favorite play above, 8,000 in that, 8 to 10K range. And then you have Cantlay. So I think those guys are going to be really popular builds. And I think these high 7 guys are going to get a lot of ownership as well. Colin, what are your thoughts on this range? And, are you on the Cantlay train as well? Like, are you going to fade him in tournaments? How are you going to handle him?
I've been the conductor of the Cantlay train, I'm pretty sure, since the beginning of the year. And I am convinced the rest of the world has lost their mind. And by the rest of the world, I mean pricing. Like, he started off in the 9s. Like, all he did was, like, put up results in, like, the 30s and 50s, but still made the cut and has dropped, like, 1,500 in pricing, and all he's done to deserve that is apparently go on an unlucky putting streak. I think he is basically holding form from his 9K range. His price is going down. It makes no sense. Just pick Cantlay in futures, pick him in head-to-heads. Everybody keep betting on Patrick Cantlay. You're all crazy for like dropping his price. So I can't get away from him. I think he's just easily like favorite play of the week. Yeah. And still his ownership is going to be under 20%. Maybe people come around to it eventually. Like, because he hasn't cracked like the top 25 yet anywhere. Like, I could.
Well, then if that's true, then he's just got to be like. I mean, if he's under 20% in tournaments, like that's obviously not high enough where like you're going to fade him. So like he's Correct. Just got to be like a building block, right?
I've been all in on Cantlay every single GPP this year where he played. Like, I'm not going to stop anytime soon. Molinari, by the way, if you're wondering why he's priced so low, is because his course history is like pretty bad here. 4 times, 2 missed cuts, never finished higher than 40th. So, and this is at times when like he was like in really good form. So he definitely underperforms here. I still think it's a little cheap, but like I could still like find a fade, especially if his ownership goes up. I like the Steele call. Obviously, we're always fans of Steele here. I agree with the Streelman call. The one we haven't talked about that's also going to be just chalk and maybe an easy fade is Charles Howell, who is always like chalk at that range because he's like never missing cuts. I can always find a Howell fade. I can definitely find it this week too, because similar to Molinari, like the history just isn't here. Sure, he did well last year, but like outside of that, like it's 2 missed cuts and like 2 like worse than like 60th or worse. So I can find a fade for Howell, especially considering he'll be chalk. The guy that I was also high on last week, I could see a lot of this week as well, is Kevin Chappell, who like he was dicey on making the cut, but ended up like, thinking at top 10 by the end of the weekend. and has been playing really well. But he also has kind of discouraging history here, similar to Molinari. But I think his long-term adjusted round, his overall form is just way higher than like anyone else in the field. So those are the guys I'm highest on for sure. We're just not going to talk about Keegan Bradley, especially since putting matters here.
He has okay history here, which is sort of interesting. Colin, what are your thoughts on Thomas Pieters? You know, a young guy. He did get second last year in his only tournament, but sort of like Fleetwood, you know, he's been playing over on the European tour for a while. So, what are your thoughts on him? How he's been playing lately, and your thoughts on him this week?
I don't think his Euro results have been encouraging enough for me to take a flyer. I know we were all about him this time last year. I even had the little built-in homer advantage since he's the University of Illinois product. But if you actually look at his Euro, I mean, just there's been nothing to like inspire confidence in his like Euro play. There's been a couple missed cuts, and the Czech Masters and the Portugal Masters, just like awful results. They might as well have been miscuts. And if like you're doing that on the Euro Tour, it just like that's a death sentence for how you play over here, just because the quality of the field is so much better. So I don't think I can get there with him. He's definitely taken a dip since this time last year. So I'll be fading Pieters pretty emphatically so far.
All right, fair enough. All right, well, let's talk about guys under about 5% or less. So just guys that we think are going to be really, really nice leverage plays, darts that we're willing to throw on, especially if these tournaments are going to be pretty top heavy. Pete, who's standing up to you as maybe just a dart throw in a top heavy tournament that you don't mind throwing out there?
Be curious to see where Austin Cook is owned after last week. I think he's someone that's a little interesting to me. Jimmy Walker played really well last week as well. He obviously is battling Lyme disease, which is a really hard thing to quantify. But he played really well last week. I think he'll be low owned again. Those are some really, less equity kind of upside plays. Also, Collins, Aaron Wise, I think is another one that it should be like 1 or 2% owned that I have no problem going to, just buying his talent. And then there'll be some other guys that'll be maybe not as high upside, but interesting, like a Bill Haas, who I think could be pretty low owned. Decent course history. The problem is he's more of a safe play than like a really high upside play. But I think he's definitely in consideration for lower ownership. Maybe like a higher stakes type of play. You got my boy Martin Laird down there too. Similar kind of play. Someone else who I think will be low owned, who I do think has some upside, is Lucas Glover. The only downside there is if we're going to say it's a putting course, then I'm probably not going to be on him. But he's someone that I expect to be low owned that, at least ball striking wise, has upside. But if we're on putting, we probably have to fade Lucas Glover. I know I stole your Aaron Wise pick, Colin, but who you got?
Yeah, I mean, you should just really save that Aaron Wise pick for me. That's a little disrespectful you should, but at the same time, you saw it coming. God, he's always been on the cusp of proving me right. I feel like every week, where like starts off strong and drops down to 28th or something like that. Still a good play overall. As long as his ownership is low, I'm gonna keep firing him. The other guy that we didn't mention is Bud Cauley, who definitely garnered a lot of love at the beginning of the year, and has since dropped off. It's kind of like not even surprising necessarily to see him down kind of in the bargain basement in 6,700. But I mean, this was a guy who was incredibly popular at one time and definitely has the hops and the upside. Not even 3 weeks ago, he's 21% owned. And I don't think his quality of play, I mean, there's some putting luck in there that kind of boosted his results, but I don't think he's fundamentally a different player than he was a month ago. His GAR has fallen off a little bit, but still has the same distance, has roughly the same accuracy. I don't know. I think if he's just going to fall off the radar because his odds just go so far low and people just don't look past a certain amount, and he's going to be under 5% owned, I would take a flyer on him finding it again because we know he has the pedigree to be up there, and just sounds like a good flyer to me.
Cool. Yeah, I like those calls, like the Martin Lair call for sure. All right, well, let's pick winners and then we'll get out of here. I'm not sure who is set to
I'm going first. I'm just going to steal it right now. I'm going DJ.
All right.
All right.
Colin, you go second.
Brian, go ahead.
Okay. All right, I'll go second. I'll go Jordan.
To Rory or not to Rory? No, he does nothing for me. I'm taking Justin Thomas. All right. 8K or 9K or both?
89.
89 or lower. Yeah.
Leishman.
Okay. Tiger maybe. I will go. I'll go Chez. Let's do it.
Chez is playing phenomenal.
Yeah, he's a real good right now.
So great to see. I want to see him ascend to like Howell level status of like highest on the money list without a win.
Colin, the brain is strong.
Yeah.
I would definitely. Well, for the fan, I want to go Tiger. But if he wins, we all win. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go Finau.
I dig it. Cool. All right, we'll end it there. Thank you guys for listening or watching as always. Good luck this week, and we will talk to you guys next week.